Welcome to Unlocking Moves, where we're going to cover the key decision points and pivotal moments that really change the trajectory of successful entrepreneurs and leaders. We want to share stories, not just the glory stories, but also the gory stories. Because as I like to say, the bigger the shit show, the bigger the lesson.
My guest today is James Dumoulin, and speaking of stories, this guy's got a million of them because that's what he does for a living. He asks strangers on the streets about their best career advice and counsel. So what is the craziest piece of advice you've received on your word on the street?
Yeah, I'd say my crazy advice was actually recently. We were in Miami and we were asking someone, what's your best financial advice for the younger generation? What do you wish someone told you when you were coming out of school? And his advice was actually buy a Lamborghini. and the thought process behind it is that if you buy the Lamborghini, people are going to gravitate towards you. He's like, no one's going to respect you if you're showing up places in a Honda Civic. When in reality, it's like a lot of people would make the argument that it's like that's not economical at all, right? It's materialistic, like it's spending your money on liabilities versus assets. But so I would say that was something kind of like crazy because most people would not advise people, especially the younger generation, to just go buy a Lamborghini. So that was really interesting.
So as you see, my guest today is James Dumoulin, who's built a nice social media empire, asking people, strangers most times, on the street for their best career advice, for their best entrepreneurial tips, and really counsel. So how the heck did you get into that? And I'd love to hear a lot of stories as you go.
So essentially, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area. And my brother and I had a good friend of ours, Josh Smith. We all were in the same Boy Scout troop together. All ended up becoming Eagle Scouts, but ultimately went our separate ways. Josh had gone to college and pursued a digital marketing agency and dropped out of school because he was either focused on school projects or client projects, and he wanted to focus on client projects. Jack was a analytics beast, won a Microsoft World Championship that they put on with Certiport, ended up getting tons of job offers at 17, 18 years old, ended up going to school in Austin, which is what brought him out here, and eventually I followed him out here, where he was getting mentored by a major, owner of a company out here called Buc-ee's. And so through that was learning the ins and outs of business, negotiation, pricing, margins, all of that. And through that was able to start his own business. And I followed him 2 years after, but prior to that, I had gotten really heavily into content creation. I started to see the value with the creator economy, just how much, not only the money that was going into it, but just the ability, right? Digital marketing was transforming. I mean, it's all about, building a personal brand, and content is key. Content is it's huge, and it's the best form of advertising, in my opinion, that's out there. And through that, by growing my own channel to about 1 million followers, we took that same skill sets and all of ours that we had and started a channel where we went all over the country interviewing business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals to really help, bring that value and perspective and mentorship to the younger generation out there, because there's so much crap on social media that we're like, if we can find a way to kind of fill the market with some actual value, because think about it, the way the kids are learning these days, it's quick dopamine hits. Yep. It's their constant instant gratification. But so it's that short form content. So we wanted to be able to way to, provide value for people by really providing some great content.
I love it, man. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Really welcome to the show.
If you're just joining us on Unlocking Moves, today's episode is brought to you as usual by HireBetter, the strategic talent partner for growth-minded entrepreneurs everywhere.
So a couple of questions for you. School of Hard Knocks was not, it was the next iteration of that's now become what you guys are doing now. You're talking to entrepreneurs and leaders and successful people, at least how you identify people on the street if they're successful. You're asking them a couple of key questions. We'll maybe get into that in a second. But how did you decide to go after you go ask random strangers on the street, people that you assume to be successful. You ask them some tips. Give me a couple of the key questions that you ask.
Yeah, so a lot of the questions we like to ask people is we want people to go back in time. We want people to feel the nostalgia. So we ask a lot of people, if you were to go back in time, have a conversation with your 20-year-old self. When you're starting from zero, coming out of high school or college, what's the best advice that you would tell your younger self?
Great question.
And it's great because you get so much just different perspective from people that really, I love that question because it's like you could be talking to someone who may be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and it's like it brings them back. And it's like if there's one thing that you wish you would have known when you were coming out of school, like what would that be? Other questions we may ask people, it really depends on the industry. If they're successful in real estate, we may ask them what's their secret to sales. If you have a client or a customer that's on the fence, they're a no. How do you turn a no into a yes? So a lot of it is very, depending on like the industry that they're in, but we like to ask a wide variety of different questions.
I can see why it's so successful because people want to hear from other people who've been there and done that, and
Absolutely.
You're able to get right inside their mind to see what they would do if they're watching at their age. That's great. So let me ask you, have you been able to monetize School of Hard Knocks?
We absolutely have. Yes. Yeah. We've been able to monetize. That's really the great thing about the creator economy is that with all these different social media platforms, they're competing against each other. So the way that they incentivize creators to create content on their platforms is that they offer like ad revenue programs to where you post content and get paid for it. The bigger we've gotten, the better, brands that have reached out to us to promote either their products or services. So known as kind of like brand deals. So we've done that as well. And then we also started a short form agency because in the last 3 years, we've generated over about 700 million views across a couple of different accounts on social media, and tried to help other people, primarily, different big entrepreneurs and brands kind of scale and grow their social media following.
So is this where I insert HireBetter ad here so I can get all your viewers?
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, so I want to ask you a very invasive question that you ask all your folks, which I cringe every time I hear it. What's the most you've made in a year?
Yeah, so this last year we did like multi six figures. So I did right over like 100,000 last year.
Nice. That's awesome. This kid's in college, guys. College. He hadn't even graduated yet. That's awesome. So I like to consider myself the listener's advocate. And if I'm watching, I've got James Dumoulin.
There it is.
There you go, James Dumoulin. I got James Dumoulin on the show. What do I want to hear from him? I want to hear the 3 best tips that you've ever heard as you're asking these folks on the street.
Absolutely. I could give you, so my number one right off the bat is take the risk or lose the chance. And I'm a big advocate of this, and it's something that you hear all the time, people that they say that they wish they would have gone all in when they were younger, that they would have taken that chance and invested in themselves when they were young, before they had all those obligations, responsibilities. They have the family, before they were in the comfort of receiving that, paycheck to paycheck, and then you have the family, and it's way harder to, escape that, right? Because you get comfortable. Yeah. So take the risk or lose the chance. I love that because, something that my brother and I talk a lot about, it's the third door policy. You're going into, let's say, like an important nightclub, and there's someone there that you have to meet. Front bouncer's not letting you in. Backdoor guys, security guard, it's like not letting it happen. You have to make the third way in. You have to find that way in to go talk to that guy, to go make that connection. And that's what we've done a lot. That's how we interviewed Mark Cuban. We had the conscious effort to go up to him, but we took that chance. A lot of people would have been like, no, it's not worth it. But it's like you never really know unless you try. The second thing I would say that people can take you places that money can't. I'm a big believer that relationships are the absolute most important thing in the world. I mean, they're really time collapsing in the sense that you may have something that you think is the biggest problem for your business, but you could go to someone who maybe they're a couple steps ahead of you, or maybe they are a 7 or 8, 9 figure entrepreneur. That huge problem to you is something that they can show you that it's really not that big, and that all it takes is a couple adjustments here and there. So I'm a big advocate of using those relationships, but providing value for those people, because we talk about this a lot as far as networking goes. Yeah. The secret to networking is you have to find a way to provide a value for people that you want to continue to network with. Otherwise, you're not going to stay in those circles for very long. And the third one, honestly, is I would say put God first in your life and watch how much better your life gets. I think that it instills the humbleness in you and just everything and peace and everything. So I would say putting God first in your life, relationships before everything. So
I love it. You're speaking to the choir on all 3 of those. So first of all, take risks, which is a lot of what this show is about, helping people uncover their unlocking move. Yeah. Number 2 was relationships matter. I'm a connector by trade, and so it's all about who you know. And obviously you have to have something about what you know, but it's really about who you know. Yeah. And the third thing is having a faith and a spiritual being is really a key to life.
Right.
I love it. Let's go.
Power.
So I'm going to ask you a slightly different question, and that is, what is 1 or 2 of the craziest interviews you've ever had where someone went batshit crazy or something was just really fascinating? Tell me a good story.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny one. So we mentioned earlier that you had saw where we went all around some nice neighborhoods in Austin, right, where we were interviewing, successful people that lived in mansions out in Westlake.
Let's reframe it. It's somebody, they went freaking door to door, cold, knocking on doors in high-end neighborhoods in Austin. So
we went probably to 100 or 200 houses and maybe had about 5% of the people that actually ended up doing the interview. We had some people that were like, you guys are out of your minds. I'm not even kidding you. They'd open the door. We told them what we were doing. They're like, you guys have lost it. You guys are crazy. And so, but I will say it was honestly one of my favorite videos I've ever filmed, and we got some incredible feedback on a lot of the short form and longer form content that we did. I'll tell you one story that I thought was amazing from that video is, so we interviewed a guy. I don't know if you saw, there was a guy in a robe.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Okay, so he answered the door. He was in a Versace robe. And we ended up doing a 15-minute interview with this guy. Come to learn, he owned a company called Capstar Broadcasting, which he owned 350 radio stations, and he ended up exiting and made.
So Robert Hicks,
Stephen Hicks.
Stephen Hicks. Yeah. I don't know him well. I know his son well.
Did you see the interview we did?
No, but I'm going to for sure.
Oh wow!
He did his first time.
Yeah. So Stephen Hicks, he did the interview with us. It was a long interview, and he ended up going really viral on Instagram and Facebook and all the platforms. And he was in a robe, and gave great advice. His brother actually, he owns, I guess, he owned the Rangers and the Stars at one point. Very successful family. He mentioned to us that he was one of Kendra Scott's outside investors. But it was funny because when we were doing the interview, I guess his wife was kind of like on the intercom, and she was just like honey, like, what are you doing? Because he was in the Robe.
I'm giving an interview. So
he gave some great advice though, and one thing that I think that he talked about was that I asked him in particular, someone who sold a company for millions of dollars, you've built businesses, you've surrounded yourself with great people. Like, what's the number one thing that you look for when you're going into business with someone? Like, when you're bringing a business partner on, what's the number one trait you look for in people? And he said that he looks for someone that's actually had some failure, in the sense that it's like you learn more about the character of a person once they've fallen on their face and gotten back up, especially as it pertains to business. And so that was a very interesting perspective, and he gave a great interview. Other crazier times, a lot of people think that, or people will ask, like, hey, like, are these interviews like set up? Because you'll notice, like, we'll just walk up to people. Some of the times we'll have people reach out to us prior to, we'll reach out to some people and set interviews up. A lot of the time we will just walk up to people. And we've had some people that will literally just be like, man, you got to get that fuck out of my face. So it's kind of funny because some people are receptive. Other people really are like terrified of technology and they just don't want to be on video, which I completely understand. I get it. But in reality, when a lot of people get the chance to talk to us and know like what we're really trying to do, everybody's like very like receptive and is always willing to do an interview. So it's really cool.
That's awesome. The other question I'm asking as an old guy who's been around the block a little bit, do you guys get them to sign waivers that you can put them on the show or anything like that?
No, not at the moment. We we let people know in advance, or like that prior to finishing the interview with them or whatever. We'll let them know that, hey, like, we've got a channel with about 1.5 million followers, and so there have been times where we actually received cease and desist letters, and there's been times where we've got people reach out to us and be like, hey man,
please don't put that up.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I'll give you another story. We interviewed a guy who was in healthcare. He was an emergency room doctor, and I asked him a question. I think it was like, how in your opinion has like COVID affected, the longevity of like the pharmaceutical and like the healthcare industry? And he gave a honest answer, what a lot of people would agree with, but it's also what a lot of people would cancel someone for or look to. And so he said, you guys got to take that down or we're going to court, because the video ended up doing well, so you got to be, very careful.
Well, I appreciate that you took it down, sounds like, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I told you when you walked in is when I first heard about you guys, I thought you guys were pranksters or punksters, or you're going to punk people, but you guys are actually getting great interviews and great advice. Yeah. So if you're a young aspiring entrepreneur, go check out their channels at School of Hard Knocks. All right, so most of my audience is a little older, and I wrote a book for entrepreneurs who are past this scrappy startup phase and are looking to scale their businesses. It's called Who's Your Mike, and every chapter is a different archetype or character that you're going to meet on your entrepreneurial journey. By the way, I tell people it's the book for a business book for people who hate business books.
Yeah.
The subtitle is A No Bullshit Guide to the People You'll Meet on Your Entrepreneurial Journey. So if you're thinking, crazy wacko business book, it's a little bit different. So each chapter is an archetype. So I've got a couple that I want to relay to you, and I want to ask you which ones might resonate more with your audience. Mm-hmm. So the first one is called Harry the Hustler. So Harry is your best sales guy, and you getting some great sales advice out there. So you run into people who have been Harry the Hustler, the greatest sales guy on your team. You're looking to scale. You need to build out your sales team. So you need to bring in a sales leader, sales manager. So you ask around, and Harry says, hey, I want the job. I'm ready to be promoted. I'm ready to be the guy. So you make that move. And so Harry is not a manager, not a leader, not good at holding people accountable, not good at systems and processes and all the stuff you need to be a successful sales leader. So now you've got a crappy manager and you've just lost your best salesperson. So that's one chapter. The other one is called Side Hustle Sam. When you're a young, scrappy entrepreneurial company, you need employees who are young, scrappy, and entrepreneurial. But at some point, that they're going to probably create their own side hustle. It sounds like you might have, James. Or Jack, and Jack's here in the audience with us today, so that's why I'm looking over at Jack. So you want to you want to encourage that side hustle? You want to give them some help? If you tell them no, hell no, they're going to leave and leave your company. So what do you do with side hustle, Sam? So those are two characters. Any of those resonate with your audience, you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think both of them, in a sense, yeah. Harry the Hustler was the first one.
Yeah.
I think that, our audience a lot of the time, they're very hungry. What's very interesting about our audience in particular is that when we originally set out the School of Hard Knocks, we really wanted to target the younger kids high school and college, right? I mentioned to you earlier, we wanted to help kind of transform the way financial literacy is taught in school and really be able to provide value through the short form content. But what we realize is that our audience is a lot older. Our audience actually pertains to people who are kind of in that they're maybe late 20s, maybe they're in their first, second, or third job, and they realize that, man, this is not it. I can't do this. But a lot of these people do have the desire and the hustle to achieve, the higher status and really, go all in for themselves, but they don't know really, where to start. They don't understand the systems or the operations. And so that's why a lot of our people have kind of gravitated towards our channel to really be able to find that value and learn so that way they can take the leap.
Dude, if we can inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, we have done our job. That's awesome. Okay. The show is called Unlocking Moves, where we try to find those key pivotal moments or decision points that really change the trajectory of your career. You're only 21 years old, so we have a shorter career, but you've made some amazing moves already. What do you think your unlocking move has been so far?
Moving to Austin, Texas. Absolutely. I'm a big advocate to people. You have got to get out of your hometown, especially I'm a big advocate, right? You have to surround yourself with the right people. You hang around 5 millionaires, there's a good chance you're going to be the 6th. You hang around 5 people driving Ferraris, there's a good chance you're going to be the 6th one getting that Ferrari. You hang around 5 bums, you're going to be the 6th bum. Mm-hmm. And so when you get out of your comfort zone and you get to a city where it just moves fast. That's what I've noticed about Austin. It moves fast. I went to Miami. It moves even faster. When you get there, you start to see people around you moving. It's inspiring, right? It gets you wanting to like work even harder. Thing about living in DC in that area is that it was very structured. Everybody's epitome of success was that 6-figure contracting job. Nobody was striving to do their own thing, to run their own business, to invest in themselves and go all in. And if you weren't that way, right? If you didn't want to go the government route or the corporate route, people almost kind of like were either envious or they looked down upon it or would be more of like that's cool, man. Good luck with that. It wasn't anything like they weren't showing any love or like support for it. And so when you are constantly surrounded by those people in that mindset, right? It's draining on you. It's draining on your energy. It's draining on everything. And so by moving out to Austin and you're surrounded by people who are very collaborative, very willing to provide value for you in a lot of different ways, it really changed the game for us, and you start to see how your mindset shifts, and it just opened up so many doors for us. Was leaving your hometown, and I'm a big advocate. Like, unless you are in a prospering city, or maybe you want to do manufacturing, or maybe you want to do something else, but like get to the area where that's prominent, where like you can actually succeed and surround yourself with the right people. And so moving to Austin was 100% the best thing that ever happened to me. Dude,
kudos to you for making the move. So many people out there say, I want to go to Austin someday. I want to go make this move someday. I want to do it someday. Yeah. They never do. So congrats on making that move. Right. The other thing you've inspired me to do is find 5 new freaking friends, because all my friends are bums. Yeah. I got to go find some better friends.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You are still a student at UT. You, I don't know if you have good grades or not. We never talked about that. But you have a very successful business. How the hell do you balance?
So that's a great question. I'm a big, if I were to go back in time, I don't know if I would have gone to school. However, I had a pretty sweet opportunity to come out to UT. My dad was in the military, had a very successful career, and I had some of his benefits, which granted me a good opportunity to kind of go where I wanted to go to school. And so as far as the balance goes, I put school on the back burner in the sense that it's like I've done what I needed to do to manage. And I've also taken the advantage by taking like online asynchronous classes, so that way, like if I have to travel somewhere for a meeting, or if we have to go somewhere for a mastermind or an event or to go film content, it's like I've got all my classes like asynchronous and remote, so that way like I can put my emphasis and focus really into more of like the business side of things, like for the School of Hard Knocks.
Nice. So I want to ask you a bit of advice that's going to help my audience a little bit. So what is one piece of advice that you would give to a parent of a high school student or college student in today's day and age?
Yeah, that's a great question. My best advice to parents is to really allow your kid to kind of explore what they want to do. What I mean by that is a lot of kids these days, and just in past generations, they've been very structured, and they've like, it goes back to kind of getting out of your hometown, your comfort zone, right? Because you're always going to have teachers and parents and everybody pushing you in one direction. But like, hey, you need to go to medical school. You need to be a doctor. You need to go do that. But rather, like, if your son wants to start a marketing agency, like, support him. It's like, let him know that it's like, hey, you need to provide for yourself. You need to do these things. But it's like to really allow them to like explore their options, and if they want to be entrepreneurial, like that's the time to do it. It's not learn just. You can start at any age, right? I mean, you look at like Gary Vee he was working in a wine store, and then in his 30s is when he started to, start VaynerMedia and all these different businesses. Or he was
saying 30s is old. I think you just said 34 is old is what I just heard.
No, not even. But some people may think that 34 is old, when in reality, it's like you can start whenever. But if we're talking about for like a kid, it's like that's the best time to really do it, and support them in that journey, and allow them to know that like there's more than just college, right? Like you don't just have to go the the college job family, right? Yep. Don't settle for mediocrity just because everyone, society's trained us that way.
Dude, that should be inspirational for everybody out there, no matter what your background is. Okay, I got one crazy question I want to ask you, and that is, what is one question that you wish people would ask you but they never do? Or put it differently, what is one question maybe you're glad they don't ever ask you? Like, tell me some dirt on James.
One question that I wish people asked me.
Yeah.
I wish people asked me, more kind of about like my advice and perspective on like real self-improvement and dating advice, and especially in a generation that it's really hard to navigate. I would say definitely that I think that I can provide a lot of value as far as like mindset, self-improvement, and actually, how to become a better version of yourself.
I love it. So it's not just about business. It's all about being a better human being.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, another comment, a great piece of advice is that if you're not happy outside of your business life, like it's not going to work. We interviewed someone who I asked him, what was the best financial decision that you ever made? And he was with his wife and he said, marry this woman right here. And I was like, actually, and I was like, and he said, yeah. And I said, like, what's the importance kind of like marrying the right person? He's like, well, that's what he said. If you're not happy, in your personal life, right, with those relationships and everything, you're going to be dreadful, in everything that you do.
That is so true. I've met so many rich people who have a miserable personal life, and I've also known many people with or without money who have a great life because of their well-rounded individuals. So
right.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. All right. Where can we find more about you and School of Hard Knocks?
Absolutely. So you can find us at The School of Hard Knocks across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. You'll find us everywhere. So we're creating content every single day. And also, if you're a big entrepreneur out there and need help creating content, you don't know where to get started on social media, reach out to us, send us a DM at The School of Hard Knocks, or you can email schoolofhardknocksinfo@gmail.com.
Thanks so much, man. On that note, we're going to wrap this puppy up. Go like and subscribe on YouTube, or go check us out on any of your podcast channels, Apple, Spotify, whatever. James, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Love what you're doing to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Kurt.
You bet,
Enjoyed
it. You bet.
If you're an entrepreneur and you think you might have outgrown a member of your team, or maybe you've got a mic, as we talked about in Who's Your Mic, check out this quiz at who'syourmic.com/quiz. That's who'syourmic.com/quiz.